All right, let's talk about hurting people's feelings. Now, there's a variety of different ways to do that. If you call someone shitter, that's sort of a generic insult and it might not hurt that much. Now, if someone with some sort of authority calls someone a shitter, that might hurt a little bit more, right? Like, Bagel 500 saying you're bad at video games is less of a big deal than Lasses saying you're bad at video games. Um, and, that's just sort of a very simple example that shows that different, the same words can have a different level of hurt to them. In that case, it's because of a level of respect or authority that a certain person has, and that's definitely true. If you respect someone more and they say something mean to you, it probably hurts more than someone you don't really care about. Um, but more importantly, certain words can hurt more than other words because they do something called keying into a history of oppression. So if I call you a shitter, that I'm not really connecting to. I guess I'm connecting to the natural human response where we don't like the idea or the concept of human waste. But that's about it. And if I call someone bad, then that's, also weaker even than that. Um, but then if I go ahead and I guess I'll just throw this out there, there's a content warning for vulgarities and offensive language. So, and before we even jump into that, let's talk about the use mention distinction. So, and this happened in one of my college classes, is that a professor was talking about the use mention distinction. He said, now it would be wrong to actually mean that. He said, it would be wrong to say, quote, all Jews should be sterilized, end quote. And it would be wrong to say that. However, mentioning it for the purposes of talking about it is different from using it. He isn't actually putting meaning into the words under those circumstances. He is simply mentioning the phrase. And that's very important to this argument, right? Um, So when I say the word faggot, that's an offensive word. I wouldn't use that word, but I can mention it. And, as I said before, content warning, vulgarities, etc. If some words are hurtful for you, this might be difficult to watch and talk about. And I think that is sort of the nature of the conversation. Um, so let's talk about it. And we'll use faggot because I know the backstory of this word a little bit. Now, I'm not gay. I have friends that are gay. Um, I find the word offensive, but it doesn't really do anything to me because I'm not part of that minority group, right? But if I was, maybe it would affect me a little bit more. Um, the word faggot means a bundle of sticks that was used as to start fires. That's where the European slang fag for cigarette comes from, right? That you start a fire with this little stick. It's a cigarette, but whatever, close enough. Um, the reason that is used as a derogatory term for gay people is because those bundles of sticks were used to light people on fire. So, when someone uses the derogatory term to insult someone who is gay or not straight, right, not heterosexual, they're keying into this history of oppression. Not only are they referencing the origin of the word, but they are also referencing the history of abuse that this minority and oppressed group has suffered. And that is why some words are more hurtful than others. That's why the word faggot is more hurtful than the word gay when they kind of their definition means the same thing. They're talking about someone who is homosexual. That both words do that, but the word faggot keys into this history of oppression and history of abuse. And so that's why that word is more hurtful. Um, the word bitch keys into a history of oppression and a history of abuse, not as strong, I would argue, as the word faggot, but it still keys into one, and it still is more hurtful than the word dick because it's one is a derogatory term for a woman, the other is a derogatory term for a man, but one of them has a little bit more weight behind it, a little bit more strength behind it, and that strength comes through the history of the word and what it's connecting to. Now, there is a word that I will not mention on here. I think we all know what it is. It's a derogatory term for African Americans or anyone of persons of color. Um, it's also kind of the name of Fats' cat, as cat is named N-word. Not what N-word means. His cat is literally named N-word. That word keys into another history of oppression and abuse that is once again very dark and messed up. So that's why that word is offensive. Now, you can talk about reclaiming words and other stuff, and I think that's a different conversation. But it is important to just understand at a basic level that um, certain words are tied to certain things, and those things make those words have more meaning. Another word, for example, is the word cunt. Now, this is a word that is considered more offensive in America than it is in Europe for whatever reason, but I would argue that it's keying into um, American social ideas, historical social ideas about female genitalia and like value therein. Um, I don't really know the exact history of that, but that's sort of where I think it's going. Um, and I also think some of these words are given arbitrary value as well. Like, I think it's not a far fetched argument to say that bitch and cunt both key into the same history, um, but one of those has more weight than the other. And I think that is in part arbitrary and in part through use or lack thereof. Um, So where do we go from this? Well, I think it is then to take it into a bigger conversation, it's important to talk about the fact that harassment, abuse, verbal abuse, mental abuse, etc. in general is really bad. People shouldn't do it. Bullying sucks, harassment sucks. Don't do it. You're a jerk if you do. But abusing certain people in certain ways keys into this history of oppression the same way that words do, often because it's using those words, and it does carry a little bit more weight. It's worse. Now, that's not to say that it's not bad if I insult Bagel for being Canadian, or if I insult him for being young, or if I insult him because he's never posted a picture of himself. That would still be mean of me. But if he were gay, not that there is anything wrong with that, but if he were and I were to insult him because of his sexual orientation, that would have a little bit more weight to it. And I think when people are talking about harassment in relation to those issues, gender, sexual orientation, race, or other things, every so often you see this argument that, like, well, everyone gets abused and it all sucks. And that is true. But certain words used against certain groups or certain ideas used against certain groups do carry more weight because they do key into this historical oppression and abuse, which really, really sucks. And it is important to remember that harassment happens to everyone, especially on the internet, and that's bad, and we should fix that. But we should also not take the conversation away from certain minority groups. We shouldn't like go into a conversation about people who are being harassed because of their sexual orientation and say, well, everyone gets harassed and it sucks that everyone gets harassed. That is true. But we can talk about specific things, and that doesn't stop progress on harassment in general. You can talk about how it is terrible that trans people get abused in real life, online, whatever. And that's not invalidating the fact that women or uh, people of ethnic minorities or people who are not trans but are not straight also get abused. Or it also doesn't validate the fact that straight, white, cis, het males also get abused on the internet. It's not invalidating that. It's not taking away from that. It is just a more specific conversation. And it's okay to have specific conversations. But the rhetoric that tries to take a step back can be very damaging and can be detrimental to having important discussions and thinking about important things. Saying, wait, let's take a step back and talk about the big picture. But the big picture doesn't have the level of minutia, the level of small details that can be discussed. Yes, harassment is bad, but it's okay and it's important to talk about minorities being harassed. That doesn't invalidate people who are majority and people who have privilege being harassed. It's bad for them too. Um, and we do need greater social change. And one of the ways to do that is awareness about the things that people are harassed for. I think that's very important. Um, Now, the other thing to mention is that certain words don't affect people as much. Some people don't care about certain words. I met someone who was offended by the use of the word gay at all. He was. God damn it. Alright. I don't know what happened at some point. I don't know when my audio cut out. I think I was talking about philosophy of language. My point is that some words are uncomfortable, but they still have to exist. And the reason they still have to exist is that without certain words, you can't talk about certain things. The way language works is it's indexical. We have a word like audience, and what audience means at its core is you and people like you. Um, and so trying to purge words from language can be really difficult. I met a guy who was uncomfortable with the word gay, and like I think that's too far because if you remove that word, then it becomes hard to talk about certain things. Um, but on the other hand, there are connotations and whatever that are also important. But either way, um, what it comes down to is respect and understanding. It also comes down to being aware that saying, hey, let's talk about the big picture here can be counterproductive and can squelch important conversations, can be a counter argument by way of distraction. So if someone's saying, hey, this issue that has to deal with this minority group really sucks, and you say, everyone has things that sucks, it's like, well, yes, you're not wrong, but why are you even bothering to say that? Of course. It's obvious. It's like saying, "Hey, let's talk about squares," and someone's like, "No, no, 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 no. We need to talk about quadrilaterals." Like, yeah, squares are quadrilaterals. It's okay to talk about squares. It's fine. Um, so sort of in conclusion, certain words and certain languages have more weight to them when they're used offensively. That's why some people do get offended. Not everyone does. I've used the word, I've not even used, I have mentioned the word faggot a few times. I have not used it, I have only mentioned it. But some people who that word would be used as a derogatory term for might not be offended by that. They might even be reclaiming that, and that's okay. That's their prerogative. They can do that. But other people are offended and hurt by that word, and they're hurt because of what the connotations that that word has, what that word keys into, what it's attached to. And it's important to understand that certain groups of people are hurt by different things in different ways and are targeted differently or attacked for different things. And it really sucks when people say, well, everyone gets that. Because, yeah, everyone does. Everyone does have people trying to hurt their feelings, but not in the same way. And if you are, like me, a straight, white, cis, heterosexual male, it can be kind of hard to understand what it feels like when someone says something to you that is keying into those histories of oppression, those histories of abuse. So be aware of that. If you're watching this in Twitch chat, let's talk about it. If you're watching this on YouTube, hi, I love you. We just talked about in Twitch chat, and you can find streams like this if you follow me on twitch.tv. If you want to support the channel, I have a Patreon on YouTube. It's a link below. On Twitch, it's also a link below. I'll see you guys for the next video, which is going to be in a similar vein. It's going to be about different types of oppression. So check that out. I'll see you guys soon.